You are listening to Down Home. Arguably one of the most iconic recording artists of the 1950s and 60s, Elvis Presley was a trailblazer. His voice, his movement, and his presence redefined popular music, earning him the title King of Rock and Roll. But behind some of his biggest hits was a singer-songwriter few people knew, Otis Blackwell. Blackwell crafted songs like Don't Be Cruel and All Shook Up. His melodies and rhythms created the energy and urgency that captivated millions. This is the story of the man behind the voice and how Otis Blackwell created the sound of the king, even if his name stayed in the background. I'm Derek Wise, and on behalf of Jay Jones, welcome to Down Home, the Canadian experience from two black men.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, yeah. On a high plateau, from the one down below to the future.
So yeah, man, I don't know about you, but in my household, in particular, my aunt Jeannie was a huge fan of Elvis. So I wasn't a huge fan of Elvis, but she had his records, so she would play them. Like we had that. I don't know if you remember, man. And it was the height of technology back then. You had the record player that looked like a piece of furniture in the living room.
Yeah, I had one.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, man. And then she had Elvis, and she had Johnny Cash, but Elvis seemed to be her mainstay favorite. And I didn't really know too much about the man. I remember at a very young age reading about him in Time magazine when he passed.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know much about him. But what kind of piqued my interest later on in life was the Fight the Power, that song, man. And that line, and I think everyone knows what that line is talking about Elvis.
Yeah,
Elvis.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I remember.
Yeah, you remember. Yeah, I don't really want to say it, but I had no idea that Elvis, for lack of a better word, borrowed from a lot of people. What about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, growing up, I didn't listen to much Elvis, but what kind of intrigued me with Elvis in the 80s, I've always known him, for the short time that I was alive before he passed away and later on. I listened to his music here and there, but what really made me be intrigued by him was Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy was a big fan of Elvis too. I was a big Eddie Murphy fan.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy kind of used his kind of aesthetic, like costumes, like the leather. I know this has nothing to do with Elvis, but it does. But the leather red suit he used in Delirious, that was inspired by Elvis. So that's when I was like, oh, who is this Elvis guy? And I looked more into him back then and sort of found out his story. He was basically a machine. He was like this big machine, big name. Colonel Tom, who was his manager, made him a big machine. And the thing about Elvis's background is where he grew up. He was heavily influenced by gospel music and rhythm and blues. A lot of sort of white artists, prominent white artists, from the Rolling Stones to the Beatles, they all were heavily influenced by rhythm and blues, black music. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and a little known man named Otis Blackwell, who also contributed to the fact that he had this aesthetic of rhythm and blues and rockabilly and country. And, Elvis was a big fan of him. And when he heard the first demo of Don't Be Cruel, within a few bars, Elvis was like, oh, I could use this. So he used it, and he often, he mimicked Otis Blackwell's kind of the way he voiced it and took it from there. Yeah.
It's interesting with Otis though. you know, we'll get into his history in a
Yeah.
minute, but it's interesting, like literally, he cut those first demos because he needed money for Christmas.
Hmm. No, I didn't know
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, and his total earnings for those six demos that Elvis took, I think four or five of them, was $150 American.
Oh, wow.
There were no royalties. Um, he did there. The only earnings on the back end for him were once Elvis passed away, he started coming out of the shadows and he actually went on tour with his own material.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the only time that he really earned money from that. And we're talking
Hmm.
about a legacy that Elvis built off of those early tracks, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and like you said, he literally mimicked the complete style of Otis,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is amazing to hear because obviously Elvis put his own flair on that, but when you hear the early recordings of Otis, it's not, oh, he sounds like Elvis. Elvis sounds like him,
Like him. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. A lot of his music didn't sell well, but he was kind of happy to be behind the shadows of writing music. He also wrote music for Jerry Lee Lewis, Great
Yeah,
Balls of Fire.
yeah, yeah.
He wrote Don't Be Cruel. He wrote All Shook Up, All in Return to Sender, Fever. Fever Elvis recorded as well as Peggy Lee. So these became big hits for them, which I think upped his profile as far as money goes, because later on in life, he just said, he was happy writing music because he took on that sort of moniker of being behind the scenes.
Yeah, was he though? You don't know, right? But what else is he gonna say?
Yeah, true, true,
You
true,
know what I
true,
mean? What else is he gonna
true.
say? Um, like I did see an interview or watched an interview of him on
David Letterman?
yeah, I watched the Letterman one, but there was another interview a little bit later than that, and he said, it's something that he repeated and something that you just said. He said, me and Elvis had a good thing going on. And and remember, he said I wrote the music. Elvis performed it. He said we had a good
Mhm.
thing going on, so I was happy to be in the background.
Yeah.
But the interesting part of that is that this creatively, that was 100% him, even though Elvis got a credit for writing,
Yeah.
which
I think
yeah.
I think there was one song that Elvis wanted to rearrange, therefore he became a co-writer, and they never ever met.
Before he became one of the most iconic songwriters in American music, Otis Blackwell was just a kid growing up in Brooklyn, New York, surrounded by music. Born in 1931 and raised in a working class neighborhood, Blackwell absorbed the sounds around him. Gospel from his church, blues from the South carried north during the Great Migration, and the rhythm and swing of jazz pouring out of radios and street corners. He was drawn to the piano early, teaching himself to play and experimenting with melody and rhythm. But more than anything, Blackwell listened. He listened to how people spoke, how they moved, and how music made them feel. Those early influences, gospel's emotion, and the storytelling of rhythm and blues, would shape his songwriting.
He
Go ahead.
considered to be superstitious, if that was the case. He was invited by the Colonel to be in one of the Elvis's movies in 1956, but he said no. I just want to keep it like this. He wanted to
Really?
be behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't. He said he considered to be superstitious because, like you said just a few minutes ago, they had a good thing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of, it's interesting though, man. Like, I know we've had this discussion before. If you have an opportunity to do something and be successful, which Elvis did,
Hmm.
but how you wonder in the back of his mind, because a lot of the creativity, like there's another lady that we'll mention in a minute, but the other track that uh, Now I'm gonna forget it now. No. Um, yeah. There ain't nothing but a hound dog before we go into the
Oh,
other lady, Big Mama
right.
Thornton.
Big Mama Thornton. Right.
Yeah, so she actually performed and wrote this song, but it was "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound" for years,
Yeah.
and in a certain style too.
Yeah.
And literally, Elvis just kind of took it
Yeah.
and changed a couple of lyrics.
Yeah.
She never got a writing credit or anything like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. At the time, that was a really big thing. And this isn't the first time it's kind of happened either. I mean, Chuck Berry didn't get near the end and the longevity of his career did, but Chuck Berry was Elvis kind of stole from his style a little bit
Yeah,
too. You know what I mean? Especially all the dancing and shimmying around, right? Chuck Berry was an innovator of that style. This was a very common thing. I'm not saying it's right, but there a lot of artists who wrote for Motown too and were in the background. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I think it was almost like an industry standard. You know what I mean? In that
yeah,
case, but this was a complete jacking of someone's image, and Elvis kind of used it to gain notoriety.
yeah. The
Yeah.
one lady that he did kind of credit for a lot of his style, and you mentioned her before when we were talking, was Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Sharp. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so like, but she was kind of a inspiration for a lot of those old, um, rock and roll,
Hmm.
bluesy, like Elvis. You got
Yeah.
Jerry Lee Lewis, even
Yeah.
Little Richard, took a little bit of her style too, right?
Yeah, she was an innovator because she was in the realm of gospel music, but her lyrics were very spiritual, and sometimes she'd cross over to pop. But the one thing about her that was really kind of crazy was her guitar work. Like
Yeah,
she was one of the first persons in like 1938
yeah,
to start using an electric guitar with distortion,
yeah.
and this heavily influenced a lot of the blues in England,
Hmm.
and and she toured with Muddy Waters in 1964, and they made this stop in Manchester, England, and all the sort of great guitarists from England and stuff were there, such as Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Keith Richards. So you see, and this is African American music as a whole.
Mm.
Like even some of the most prominent people from the Rolling Stones they say we took that style
Yeah, exactly.
and put it into popular music. Now, you can argue Vanilla Ice kind of took hip hop, and these guys were considered put on a pedestal. I hate to say it, but it was easier for people to digest white artists than it was for the talented black artists, unless you were resilient and stuck to it, or you were just way ahead of the game.
Yeah,
So
true, true.
she was one of the people that was an innovator, especially with guitar stylings and
Hmm.
the music, and some of her music's in the Library of Congress, and
Yeah.
I'm sure she influenced Otis as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But before we end this episode, I don't know if you remember our time at Cornwall Street Baptist Church, but that kind of illustrates the unshakable bond between Nova Scotia and the southern states. Is that music was in our church?
Yeah, it was. It was. It
You
was.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it was.
remember I remember going to church, and when especially my uncle Harold, man, when he used to visit Cornwall Street, he had an electric guitar.
I remember him. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah,
yeah,
I remember him up playing. And I remember like going to church every Sunday.
yeah,
I remember one night, I'll never forget it. Like it was something crazy and magical. Like the whole like we were singing gospel music. But then I don't know, some sisters were touched by spirit or whatever the case may be, man. The whole congregation got up. I remember like you go in and the hall's there, the pulpit's up there, and there are benches around there. But around the benches and down the main aisle, everyone was holding hands and swinging their arms and singing. And I remember being there. I was probably about 10 years old, and I honestly felt it, and I felt the power of the music, like just because it raised to a certain frequency. I don't know, we were all in the sort of same wavelength, but I'll never forget that magic moment in the sense of when music, I really thought, holy shit, man. Pardon my French, but it's really powerful, you know?
Yeah.
And there were times like that. Cornwall Street always wasn't like that, but music was a big thing for our church.
Man, definitely.
And, you know, hymns, gospel music has always been a way of life for Black people in general, even back to the days of sort of the days of slavery. Like a lot of the messages and stuff were hidden in gospel music to garner safe passage and stuff like that.
Yeah, true.
It was really cool. A lot of messages.
And before we end, Jay's not on tour. He's just got another background there, man. He's
different location.
Just a different location for a minute.
Yeah. We'll be back to regular scheduling programming in 6 weeks. We'll have Bob Marley up in the background again. Don't worry. One love. Don't worry about a thing because everything's going to be all right. Yeah, for sure.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground.
You have been listening to Down Home. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, yeah. On a high plateau, from the one down below to the future of the funk, getting lost in the flow. Contact with the spot magex. Now it's time to flex with the force from the soul, reaching all aspects, getting deep, no time to sleep. As you reach your next phase, laying it all on the line. New trail start to blaze. It's a fire inside, a brand new path, breaking down the sum to one. Feeling free, I just laugh with the joy of a beat boy.
The song Breaking New Ground from The Breakdown.
Only to see the perfect blend, like a diamond in the rough, ready to drop a perfect gem. It's time to shine so fine to see what you find. A revolution starts with the evolution.